Hi, I'm Siege from the Puma podcast team. If you like listening to this show and others created by our team, you can help us keep making them through our Puma Patak tip jar. Our goal is to get 100 of you, our friends, to make a contribution and show your support for the journalism and storytelling that we do. We're happy to keep making shows that you can listen to for free, but making them isn't free, so we appreciate any support you send our way. All you need to do is to go to pumapodcast.com where you'll find a link to the Pumapatak tip jar.
Hi, I'm Mika Ortega from YSAL, a consultancy firm that specializes in communication for social change. So, I've had the honor of working with NGOs, activists, and advocates on issues like public health, climate change, and human rights. And part of the work that we do at YSAL is audience research. Really trying to understand, nasa na bang mga kausap natin? 2022 was a historic year. Marami ang tumaya noong eleksyon at marami rin ang nasaktan. But what now? Ano na ang gagawin natin? So, here are some thoughts and reflections as a Puma podcast friend. You've probably seen it online too, the tag 31M. If you haven't, well, this refers to the 31 million Filipinos who voted for the current president of the Philippines. In our research, 31M typically appears with words like ginusto, nabudol, and more prominently, the word kayo. It's an articulation na hindi tayo pareho. Ginusto niyo yan and therefore deserve niyo ang bad governance. It's a classic us versus them scenario. The thing is, this entire conversation about the 31M comes up amidst calls for accountability. And unfortunately, minsan nakaka-distract siya. Kasi imbis na ang focus ay seeking accountability from those in power, it gets shifted to placing blame on the people who voted. But aside from the blaming behavior, our research also picked up another reaction to the election: withdrawal from participation. Kung dati-rati sasali sa events or magiging vocal online, ngayon, quiet na muna. Both reactions are understandable, but they also tell us that the results of the elections caused frustration and only deepened cynicism. And cynicism, well, cynicism is the real enemy. Pero pause muna. We also recognize the need to carve out a space for anger and grief, for dealing with the fallout of a loss. So allow me to say, yeah, I get it. It's frustrating. It's infuriating. Nakakagalit. Masakit. For me, what gets me is the realization that there are many people I work with who fought hard for the freedoms we enjoy today. We can be vocal online. We can gather more than 3 people in public. We can create content or write opinion posts openly seeking accountability from government. These are freedoms we enjoy and maybe even take for granted. But they came at such a high price. I imagine how difficult it was for the people who fought back then to see this happen to the country they love now. Masakit. It's understandable to be so angry, to want to have nothing to do with this country anymore. But in times like this, I remember something I promised myself when I was in high school. I was having a conversation with my dad, Palawan radio broadcaster, anti-corruption and anti-mining advocate Jerry Ortega.
Huwag natin babastusin, no? Igalang natin ang mga...
My dad was someone I knew to be idealistic and hopeful. But as we were talking, my dad was so jaded, so cynical, expressing how he lost faith in Palawan, saying he wanted to leave the country. I remember I couldn't believe what I was hearing. I looked up to my dad for his courage and ideals. Tapos, siya yung mawawalan ng pag-asa. So I made myself a promise. For as long as I can hold on to it, I'll hold on to hope. Even if inevitably, when I get older, I lose it. Even if as part of growing up, I get jaded too. For as long as I can, I promised, I will choose to hope. About 7 years after that conversation and that promise, Dad got killed for exposing massive corruption in government. And my family has been fighting for justice for almost 12 years now. There were many times when I felt like I don't owe my country anything anymore. I already sacrificed too much. Pero, dun ba natatapos ang kwento? My family defined justice as having achieved a world where people like my dad, like Jerry Ortega, can live. I refuse to end my dad's story with, he was killed. The end. They won. No way. I refuse to give in. His death must mean something. The story continues because we're still writing it. The same thing applies now. The story doesn't end with the 2022 elections. No way. We are still writing our story. The founder of Hope-Based Communications, Thomas Coombs, had such a good point about anger and hope in our podcast.
How do you channel anger into constructive action for lasting change? When people are angry, it's the moment where you most need to give them the sense that there are actual practical solutions. Otherwise, you'll find that anger can very quickly be channeled into more division.
Division. The antithesis of unity. A single word that defined the cohesive and well-resourced campaign of the current president. But if you look back, in 2021, the word unity came from progressives who talked about how we needed to unite and to find a unifying leader. The ideal of unity was something both sides recognized as essential to win the 2022 elections. It was simply a matter of execution. But division continues now. Even former Vice President Leni Robredo commented about it.
Sa kaiwasan na natin na mag-away-away. Alam ko na mahirap siyang gawin, especially after the elections. Pero alalahanin nyo lang that the more na mag-away-away tayo, ang nagbe-benefit yung mga populist sa autocrats.
We've seen it time and time again. Filipinos put a premium on values like community, compassion, and respect. You've probably seen it co-opted and used against us in familiar phrases like, "Ano bang ambag nyo?" or "respect my opinion," as responses to criticism. But we've also seen how it is precisely this sense of community, compassion, and respect that made Filipinos act on their neighbors' behalf. Nung pandemic, if makita nila na yung buntis nilang kapitbahay walang pang-ayuda, pupunta sila sa barangay para magsabi. Nung nakulangan ng pagkain, nagsulputan ng community pantries. Para sa kapwa, hindi sila tatahimik. It is also precisely our values as a people that won us our freedom in 1986. Remember that. We just need to reclaim our values. Hindi pa tapos ang kwento. So okay lang to find time to heal from this year. But in doing so, let's be careful not to alienate people. Because the only way for us to win is to change people's hearts and minds. Kasi mahihirapan tayong manalo kung tayo-tayo lang. We do this as a community, with compassion and respect for one another. Sabi ng isang veteran human rights advocate, kailangan samahan at sunduin ng mga tao. Ang ganda nun. Samahan, huwag iwanan. Sunduin, huwag sisihin. So while the 2022 elections is still fresh in our memory, let's also remember why we chose to give of ourselves. Bakit na nga ba tayo tumaya? Para saan? Para kanino? Hindi ba para sa taong bayan? Again, I'm Mika Ortega from Wise Owl. This episode was written by myself with substantial points from Oya Ariola and Jo Zanada. This was produced by Kat Ventura and edited by Joe Salcedo. For more stories on hope-based communication, I invite you to listen to our podcast, Give a Hoot. It's available on Spotify, Apple Podcast, Google Podcast, or wherever you listen to podcasts. If you like this episode, don't forget to give us a 5-star rating on your podcast app. At para sa mga mahilig manood sa YouTube, Puma Podcast na rin po kami dun. Just search Puma Podcast and subscribe to our channel. Thanks for listening.